ES Audio.
What would you pay to see the Wimbledon final? And if you weren't successful in the ballot, how would you even get a ticket? For some, the secondary ticket market has the answer to both of those questions. And in the case of the first one, when I wrote this on the day those tickets went on sale, there was one being offered for the men's final by a trader on Viagogo for £19,000. It was right next to the Royal Box. The face value was £5,000, but the true value of a live event these days is apparently whatever it's worth to you.
And that value is pretty subjective. It's really, really hard to place a very specific value on these experiences. And what's really important to me may not be very important to you. My favorite sports team might not be your favorite sports team. You know, there's a lot of other considerations. And so the price is what someone's willing to pay for it.
Cris Miller is Viagogo's global MD. He doesn't give many interviews, but his industry and his company has taken a reputational battering in the last few years. Governments, including the UK's, have pressed hard with regulation, and some want them to go even further. And then there was the pandemic that closed the world down and cost his company £300 million. If you're here hoping to learn lessons about coping with crisis management, yeah, they're all here.
All of a sudden, Ticketmaster decides to roll out a service, and they rolled it out with a hockey club.
That must have been a fun day.
It was frightening. Yeah, yeah. It was frightening.
I'm David Marsden from the Evening Standard. This is a big conversation where we're going to talk about those controversial issues, but also about how a business like Viagogo actually works. And to do that, we may as well start right at the beginning.
There was two gentlemen back in 1999, Jeff Floor, Eric Baker, were finishing up their entrepreneurship program at Stanford University. And one of the responsibilities that they had was to start a business plan. They had to come up with a business model. Eric, who is our founder, was visiting New York City. He was going to take a date. He wanted to impress the date. And he wanted to get tickets to Lion King. Lion King was the hottest show on Broadway at the time. And he didn't know how to get a ticket. One of his friends basically said, well, why don't you try so-and-so ticket broker? They have a shop, down in Times Square. So he said, okay, gives him a call. Person on the line was very rude, gave him one option, one location.
Yeah, I think in London, we've all been to those.
Yeah, very, not one of the more pleasant experiences. Hung up the phone, didn't really like that concept, and then checked online. This was early days, the internet, you got eBay was an option. You had Craigslist, which is kind of like Gumtree here, classified ads, but didn't feel secure with that at all. So he needed a sure thing. He wanted to make sure that he wasn't going to be embarrassed, by not getting the tickets for his date, and thought, well, I could go to the venue before the show, but that's pretty risky. I don't know what that's going to be like. Not a great experience either. Went back to the ticket broker and ultimately relented and purchased the tickets and sort of thought to himself, geez, there's got to be a better way here. I don't really have a good ability to resell my tickets either. So that was really the primer for what became StubHub in the United States. So solving a need, which is that the ticket resale market has existed since the days of gladiators. This has gone on, in time immemorial. Probably has. So what they quickly realized when they were doing the investigation is that the ticket market was highly, highly fragmented. Lots of maybe individual ticket broker companies. There's a lot of people that will sell things outside the venues. Maybe you have your network, but it wasn't really done in a way that was safe and secure for the fans. So it's about a managed marketplace more than anything else. And it's about ensuring that if and when a fan wants to use the resale market, like on Viagogo, that there is a trusted, reputable, in case of the United Kingdom, regulated source to be able to do that.
Yeah, the foundation of Viagogo is a love story, really. And I've used Viagogo before, years ago, to buy tickets for the Edinburgh Tattoo, which was sold out purely to impress a girl. Yeah. I wonder how much of your business has been based on guys and girls trying to impress each other?
It's a good question. It's used for a lot of cases, and that's obviously one of them.
But what people think about when they think about the secondary ticket market is astronomically high prices, the people being charged huge amounts for gigs, the many percentages higher than the face value of that. Is that fair to sell a ticket you've bought for £60 for 120?
Again, looking at the service, we saw that the market existed with or without us. We didn't create the market. And so the one thing that's really unique about Viagogo and our brand in the United States, StubHub, is that it's really there to enable more of a safe and secure and efficient way to do it. And so I think that the most important thing to understand about the business and the market really is that the demand is what's driving a lot of this, right? So there's only one Taylor Swift, there's only one Harry Styles, there's only one Champions League final, and that inherently is going to be in excess of what the supply is, meaning that there's going to be more people that want to go to the Champions League final than there is seats available. And that inherently is going to create a market. And so what's really critical, though, in those cases, given the sensitivity about these tickets, right? This experience is so emotional for people, and everyone has this real, kind of tie to their favorite artist or their sporting event, is that you have a place or places that you can go to feel confident in to transact, and that there's recourse, in the instance that there's any issues at all. What we do is that we have a number of different preventions and considerations to ensure trust and safety on the website. But put simply, is that the overwhelming majority are successful, but in those really, really small cases where they're not, we either step in and find a replacement for the fan on the buy side, or in the extremely rare circumstances that we can't, we'll provide a full refund. So that's what we do.
Who's setting these prices? How do tickets get to the value that they do? Or, in some cases they're sold at face value. Who's deciding that?
Yeah, one would think it's the seller, but it's actually the buyer. The demand is what ultimately creates the pricing. So as most simple economists will understand, that there's going to be an imbalance, and depending on how much supply there is in the market and how much the demand there is, when you find a willing buyer and a willing seller, they meet, and that value is pretty subjective. It's really, really hard to place a very specific value on these experiences. And I think what most people tend to use us for on is that their desire of going to these events is highly dependent on their own circumstance. So what's really important to me may not be very important to you. My favorite sports team might not be your favorite sports team. There's a lot of other considerations. And so the price is what someone's willing to pay for it. Most people get really fixated on the top 2% of all events, the Taylor Swift that will be going on sale, or, the Champions League final, where there's this like extreme imbalance between supply and demand. The overwhelming majority are not that case. And so actually, in many cases, you find tons of value on our website that wouldn't have necessarily been there at the primary market.
When's the best time to buy a ticket? You mentioned Taylor Swift had just announced her dates come back to Europe.
Yeah.
Is now the best time to go on Viagogo and pick up? I don't think they're on sale yet, but when they go up on sale, or is it 5 minutes before the concert begins?
It's a good question. I've been doing this for 20 years now, and I don't even really know. There's a lot of it's not like a financial market, right? It's again, you've got all these considerations to figure out, because it's unclear how much supply will make it to the website, right? In some cases, very limited supply make it. In other cases, there might be a lot of supply that make it, and there's a number of different reasons for that. We always recommend that fans come to the site and check often, and make sure that they understand the dynamic nature of pricing, which can shift all the time in a number of different reasons. If you're going to buy a ticket for a festival and the weather changes, if you're going to, maybe some artist pulls out of a festival, there's a lot of different reasons why pricing can change. And it's really important that the fans that use it to buy, do their research and ultimately evaluate what's appropriate for them. It's at their discretion. Really, our platform is probably one of the only places you can access tickets for certain events, like a Champions League final, or the average fan, let's say, like a Champions League. Maybe if you're a Adidas or something, and you can get tickets for free, or you're, in the government. But the point is that most people have to go through, the quagmire that is to purchase a ticket, which is really complicated, and it's got a lot of anxiety and things like that. So we believe that we're providing a lot of inherent value for the purchasers. If they end up using the ticket, great, but now you have a platform to resell. Most event organizers, in fact, all of them, from what I can imagine, is from what I'm aware of, is that they don't provide any refunds. So there's no ability to give the ticket back to the box office for whatever reason. And in addition to that, we're very, very intent on attendance. It's like a big thing for us. We want to make sure that the venues are full, the atmosphere is really critical. All of those types of things we believe are value contributors into the industry.
What made you join? What were you thinking 20 years ago? You going, yeah, this sounds great, or were you like, well, man, I need a job? What brings you to it?
It's a combination of both. So when I went into the origin story, I got to meet both the founders when they were finishing up their degree, completely randomly. But my history has always been, I've been around sports my whole life. I was actually an athlete. So I ran track, or you guys call it athletics. My father was a coach for many, many years, became an athletic administrator at a university, which was all about, the full sports for the university. Ultimately got a job at Nike. And so I've been around live events, on the sporting side for forever. When I moved to Oregon, I'm from Portland, Oregon. Moved there when I was a freshman, and that's right when the whole grunge thing took off, and went to Pearl Jam.
Were you wandering around in a flannel shirt?
I was around with ripped jeans and the whole bit, but I was obsessed with going to these gigs. I was like very fortunate to see Pearl Jam and Soundgarden and Alice in Chains and all these great bands. And
this is a whole other conversation that
awesome.
we are going to be having.
Yeah, it was amazing. Yeah. So I actually used the resale market because, there was a huge demand for those events, and bought from people outside the venue, and, didn't love the experience. So when I fast forward to when I met them and they explained the service to me, I immediately got it. I was like, oh my gosh, that makes so much sense to me, because I was already a kind of a participant, in the market. And so, yes, I was looking for a job. So that's not, I wouldn't say that I did it for completely, altruistic reasons, but yes, I ended up joining them. I was one of the first 6 or 7 employees when we started StubHub in 2000, and I've been doing this for my whole career so far. I haven't done anything else.
Okay, to the ads. While they're on, hit that follow button on your podcast provider so you never miss an episode of How to Be a CEO. Back in a sec.
How quickly did it take off?
The amount of times that I was told that it was never going to happen, I can't really count. So just to be clear, we remain pretty steadfast in our beliefs, and there was some pretty difficult times, to get through, but we knew that what was really important is that we knew what we were doing was better than the alternative. It was a very, very big market in spite of what we did. Hard to estimate, but we estimated that the market was in the range of, at that time, maybe 8 billion or something. And so we felt confident if we could figure out, the ways to communicate it, that we would ultimately get there. But it was challenging. We did primarily partnership work. I would say that a lot of it had to do with our relationships with here was football clubs and a couple of the rugby premiership clubs, and in the United States it was mainly sports teams. So it had a sports foundation, but we did other things. We, on the music side, we did charity auctions that we operated really early days with people like Britney Spears and and others, and all of that kind of feeds into, once you get a little bit more of a momentum in the marketplace, you get into a bit of a flywheel, and then you're applying marketing, and we were doing, really early days at StubHub. We were one of the first people to actually use Google AdWords. Literally, we were one of the first people. Yeah, that obviously is a really important channel, but there's others. There's radio, and there's in the United States we have sports radio is very, very big. Here in the UK, we did more pop radio, things like that. So, but you got to stay at it. We just got to stay at it.
There's a lot of hustle went into this, isn't there?
A
lot of hustle.
Yeah, still a hustle.
Yeah. What were the hours like? Right, think right back to the beginning.
Pretty insane.
Yeah,
pretty insane. I mean, I will. I'll never forget. There was one year in 2002. I think it was 2002, 2003. And we're doing everything we can to validate the service. We're speaking to concert promoters, and it was Clear Channel back then, and we're speaking to AEG, which is the second biggest concert promoter out there, and we're speaking to sports teams, and they're all pushing back and not really completely bought in, and then all of a sudden Ticketmaster decides, and in the United States, Ticketmaster is like the dominant, primary, and they decide to roll out a service that was competitive with StubHub, and they rolled it out with a hockey club.
That must have been a fun day.
It was frightening. Yeah, it was frightening, and I remember all of us sort of sitting there and talking about it, and Eric, bless him, our founder, was very much like, this is a positive because it affirms the service. It sort of reinforces the fact that what we were saying was right, and he was right, and we just kept at it, and we found more and more opportunities and reinvested in the technology and the product, and the customer service is a really big deal to us, and making sure that trust and safety is critical for our business. And so lucky for us that it's paid off so far.
But was there a point when you went, this is a stable company, we are going to succeed?
Yeah. Here in the UK with Viagogo, I think it probably took us about 5 years or so to get to that place where you felt like, okay, we're making the sort of commitment now that we're going to see this, through the long haul. You always hope that you have this like long-term business that's going to be around for forever, and you can continue to reinvest in it. And that was, I think, roughly around the time where, we felt, okay, this is working, but that came with a lot of effort, and a lot of and a lot of sleepless nights, as you said. But it's for a marketplace and running a marketplace, for the listeners that do have marketplaces, flywheel elements of that are really, really critical. Making sure that everything is working. The more liquidity that you have, the more buyers you have, the more sellers that come, and making sure that you're reinvesting in the product and the service and the customer service, so that the buyers and fans continue to feel very comfortable with everything, and trust plays a huge role in it, and it hopefully kind of feeds on itself. And that's where we saw it in the United States. It was roughly about the same time.
Yeah, and then I guess things just kind of take on their own momentum, and they're getting bigger and bigger, and then people start like really looking at what's going on, what's happening with this market. Suddenly there are governments looking at you, wanting to impose regulation. I mean, were you guys ready for that? Well, it must have been. Look, I just want to sell tickets.
Yeah, I think it's a good question, and one that I think we've learned a lot about how you run a business, particularly in the United Kingdom and Europe versus the United States. We've certainly look at things differently, which I think is really valuable, so that we know how to run the service more effectively for everybody that use it. And so, in any industry, when you see it, whether it's transportation or or travel or any of these other industries, when you have this disruptor, that comes in and starts to encroach on how things are done, and we have antagonists, and people that didn't want to see us do well, and that adds to the kind of retrospective of like, what is it going on with this business, how does it work, and all those types of things. And so were we ready for it? Not really, but we have to work through it.
Were you ready for when the world shut down during COVID?
Well, the great story about that is that we got this opportunity in 2019. So in 2007, StubHub was acquired by eBay. So myself and our founder, Eric, had left StubHub in 2005 to come and start Viagogo. So we basically said, well, geez, this is kind of well on its way. This business model's probably going to get copied. Why don't we do it ourselves? And so we came over to the UK. I did some investigation about what the market looks like, and saw relatively the same thing, which is the way that the market operates, and ultimately built the business, but stayed out of the United States. So we focused on growing Viagogo just in the UK, Western Europe, eventually Eastern Europe and Asia and South America, and we kind of just did everything we could to bring our sort of belief about the value of this service outside for event goers all over the world. But fast forward, so eBay took the business on StubHub, did a great job with it, grew it a ton, and then ultimately decided to sell it in 2019. So they contacted us, and because we have all the heritage and the roots with that business, felt like, wow, this is like a once in a lifetime opportunity.
2019.
So let's go and we'll raise some money, and we'll get some equity and some debt together, and Eric took the lead there, and we ultimately won the auction, which is fantastic. And so we're
this is like the ultimate eBay auction.
Yeah, exactly. Trust me, eBay did pretty well. And so we very, very happy that was being able to bring the two businesses back together. So now we have this global marketplace, but you're kind of watching the world and seeing what's happening, and sort of notice, because we saw it really quickly. We saw events actually getting canceled probably at the start of 2020 in Asia, and you're sort of hoping, fingers crossed, that it's contained, and we closed the deal, and in March of 2020 everything shuts down. And so we didn't time it particularly well, I would say. but in fact,
eBay were like, we timed that really
yeah, feeling they're probably all patting themselves on the back. However, what I will say is that through that, you learn a lot about your resolve, and so it went from doing what it was doing to zero, in a matter of a couple days, and we were responsible now for this new business, and so it was nerve-wracking, and in addition to that, we actually had to go through the competition review here in the United Kingdom. So we had to do that while we were going through COVID. So it was like a double kind of whammy, as it were, of difficulty that we had to maneuver through. So no, we were not prepared for it. But going back to the point of the whole service, which is really the trust, and the guarantee that we provide, we had to dig into our pockets pretty deeply and ensure that all the people that bought tickets for events that were canceled were going to get refunded.
That's a lot of money, though.
Lots of money, 300 million pounds that we had to, it was, but we had to focus on what happens afterwards, and so if the service doesn't have trust, if the fans don't trust that they can use it, that someone's going to come through, then our business doesn't work. And so the reality is that was a priority, as complicated as it was to manage the cash and get through. It was a priority of ours. We knew that would ultimately separate us out from the rest, right? And lots of companies went under, and really it was catastrophic. But when you fast forward to the other side of it, we were the only ones that did it, for the most part, especially in our market. So if you bought a ticket through a social media channel, or maybe you bought off Gumtree or whatever it was, no recourse, like you're out of luck. So that was complicated and stressful, but it was really important for us.
Yeah. So did it bounce back really quickly, or did it take its time? Were people reluctant to get it?
Yeah, it took a little while. We sort of thought that and hoped really that there was going to be this like great reopening, and that wasn't really the case. It was like bits and pieces, and I think most people will remember, we had limited attendance, for certain events where people were separated, and they played games without fans for a while and things like that. So it was a slow rebuild, but 2020, end of 2022 and 2023 has been full steam ahead.
And what markets are doing the best right now? Is it the pop things? Is it the festivals? Is it the sports?
Yeah.
Well, what's kind of succeeding?
Well, for us, actually, everything's up, which is great. But music's really popular in Europe. in the United Kingdom, really popular. The other things that have popped up a lot recently is F1 has been really, I think that what they've done with Netflix is really created a lot of popularity. And we see a lot of tourism. We see a lot of people using our service to travel to events. So oddly enough, even for the Ashes, which has been one of our best Ashes we've ever done, the highest international buyer has been Americans, which is quite unique.
That surprises me.
Surprised me too.
Cricket doing well in the home of baseball. What's going on here?
I know. But I think it just sort of proves a point that we're also introducing the service to people that may casually have thought about these events, and now all of a sudden you get the opportunity to do it, and people are taking the chance to do that and taking the opportunity.
So where do you go next? What's the next phase for you guys? What's happening?
Everything, when you think about innovation and you think about all the firsts that we did. So we were the first ones to put a guarantee in place against the resale market and ensuring the security as it were. We were the first ones to make sure that we had the ability for fans to see the views of their seat and the 360 kind of view of which is more of that is coming to be able to give more clarity for where you seat. We had the first app, for instance, and so there's a lot of things I think that that we're investing in things that we'd like to innovate on that the team is constantly coming up with, and we're hopeful that soon enough that there'll be more opportunities to make these types of announcements. The other thing I'd say is that we feel very, very strongly that event organizers should continue to explore using our service. It's not just about resale. When you think about marketplaces and you think about how Amazon's evolved, we have in the United States in particular lots of event organizers that use the service to directly list their primary tickets on our website, because we invest in a lot in marketing, and we have a lot of fans that just like to use our service and maybe not go through the the sort of quagmire of the primary market. And so we think that's another big area of growth.
In the last 20 years, when was the last time you got 8 hours sleep, Chris?
Before I had kids, I would say. And I've had kids for 17 years now, and I have 3 of them, so that was probably the last time. Yeah, between work and kids, it's a little tricky.
That was Cris Miller of Viagogo. For more interviews, news and analysis, check out the Evening Standard's business pages, either in the newspaper or online at standard.co.uk. How to Be a CEO is back on Monday morning. Start your week with us. I'll see you then.